Hey, YouTube family, welcome to another Kevin Strong show. And in this video, we're going to talk about states where foreclosures are rising. We're going to briefly talk about NAR, the National Association of Realtors, now how they came up with that $410 million settlement, about listing agents and buying agents and all this other good stuff. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about how that decision brought the Zillow stock down in one day by 14%. So yes, this is a new look. Sometimes you have to put something white on your chest and on your head. It's time to cuddle, baby. Kidding, just kidding. But if you're laughing, you know what I'm going to ask for if I made you laugh right now. Smash that like button, comment, and share because I care. So without further ado, the first component we're going to talk about is the states where we're seeing a rise in foreclosure activity. So the title of this article is Map Shows States Where House Foreclosures Are Rising. Let's see if I can make this bigger for you guys. See how that looks. That should be better. Okay, so we're going to scroll down here, and it says, in a housing market strained by an affordability crisis where only 15.5% of homes for sale in 2023 were accessible to the typical household. So basically, as we all know, the majority of folks, over 80%, cannot afford a home at these current levels. Home prices are still up. The median new listing price, I just checked that on Redfin, is also up. And that's why I did that video last week talking about we may get certain markets that have a pullback, but in aggregate, I don't think we're going to see that 28% decrease in home values like we did in 2008. Once again, to reiterate, because we are dealing with inflationary pressures now that did not exist back in 2009. So I'm going to skip down here to this map. This is a map that's basically highlighting states where foreclosures are tipping, going up here. Sorry about that, guys. We'll get there. There we go. My mouse is kind of delaying a little bit. So Missouri, year-over-year percentage increase, 50. Pennsylvania's up 46%. Bump in Indiana. South Carolina, year-over-year percentage increase, 51%. And Texas up 7%. So it highlights these particular 5 states: Texas, Missouri, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina. Definitely Florida is in the mix, and we'll get down to that a little bit. They're talking about REOs here, and basically what REOs are is bank-owned properties. And that's really a good number to watch too, because when you're looking at real estate-owned properties, REOs, that definitely means that the homeowner who was delinquent went through the entire foreclosure process. The bank was able to take back the property, and now they're remarketing the property on the open market. And those are called real estate-owned properties because the bank now owns the distress property. So let's look at some stuff here. Notably, Florida, Carolina, Texas, New York, and Ohio emerged as hotspots, collectively registering thousands of new foreclosures. Okay, Florida led the charge with 2,700 foreclosure starts, closely monitored by California and Texas. Now, if you're just reading this real quickly, there's little nuggets in this that the average person may miss. Foreclosure starts. Remember my last video, ladies and gentlemen, how I talked about, depending upon what state you're in, it could take 2, 3, over 4 years, because the timeline from the time the homeowner defaults on the mortgage until the lender can take the property back can take a long time. So foreclosure starts and REOs are totally 2 different buckets of statistics. As I mentioned earlier, REOs means that the bank has executed the foreclosure process and has retaken possession of the property. If foreclosure starts, it's just something that's starting. You just don't know when it's going to end. Maybe major metropolitan areas, especially those with high populations such as New York, 1,400 foreclosures, Houston, a little bit over 1,000, Los Angeles at 817, and Chicago at 763. Those are relatively low numbers. And once again, as you can see here, here's the operative verbiage. Foreclosure starts. Miami with 804 was among the hardest hit, only 804 in Miami. Once again, this is going to take a long time. Like I said, I looked at some data on Redfin in the medium listing price. The medium price in which people are listing their properties for is up year over year. Sales activity is still crawling at a snail's pace because there's an affordability crisis. So the analogy I like to tell people all the time that makes this really simplistic is, think of it this way, guys. Let's say the housing market, the price of homes in aggregate is a gallon of milk, and a gallon of milk is $10. And the price comes down, let's say 20% on average. So the gallon of milk is now $8. It's no longer 10. You say, what a big pullback. It's now down 20%. A gallon of milk is only $8. But what if, because of inflation, your wages, all-time consumer debt, all these other things that are squeezing the average household to the point where they don't have any discretionary money left over, what if you're in that situation where even though the milk went from $10 down to $8, that your budget only allows you to pay for a $6 gallon of milk? So even though prices have come down 20%, they are still unaffordable. I think that's what we're looking at, the new norm in terms of dealing with inflation. Each market is dependent. As I said last week, some will come down a little bit more than others, but in aggregate, do not expect to see an overall housing pullback of 30% like it was in 2009, unless the one qualifier I'm going to say, our financial system implodes like it did in 2008 when the federal government had to come in and inject quantitative easing to keep capitalism going. Anything short of that, I think we're going to have to get used to new high homes. So without further ado, like I said, I talked about NAR. Basically, NAR settled on this antitrust lawsuit for $410 million for a Reader's Digest version of that. You list your home for $5,000. The agent comes out, you like the agent, and you say, hey, I'm going to let you represent me and sell my house for $500,000. The listing agent says, hey, I'm going to charge 5%. You agree to the 5%, which is, roughly $25,000. But let's say the listing agent who you struck this deal with is keeping 3%. The other 2% is going on what's called the MLS, the multiple listing service. That 2% is put out on the MLS to attract other agents who are representing the buyer component of the transaction, hopefully enticing them through not only the quality of your home, but, I hate to say it, the compensation that the agent's going to get if you buy that house to, quote unquote, convince you that this is the house for you. So the seller is saying, why am I paying for the buyer through my equity? Why shouldn't the buyer pay their agent for that? And that's in a nutshell what the lawsuit's all about. Also, it did say in the settlement that I think effective July of this year, you can no longer, as the listing agent, put a buyer's compensation on the MLS. So now that makes things very, very complicated for those agents out there who represent buyers. You may have to have your buyers pay you directly. It's probably going to require you to have some type of exclusive agreements signed by your buyers saying, hey, in the event that I can't work something out with the seller to pay me, are you willing to pay me? And when you're in a situation when you're in an all-time affordability crisis, that's going to be very difficult because a lot of these people have minimum down payment programs or no money down programs, and that's how they're able to get in the home. They don't have the extra income to compensate an agent. So all of that's got to get worked out. It is very, very, very fluid and confusing. So devil's in the detail. For full disclosure, I am an active licensed broker, real estate broker in the state of Washington, and I also have a mortgage license in Washington in the state of Maine, but my mortgage license is inactive, but my real estate license is active. I specialize in commercial multifamily. Okay, without further ado, we're going to slide over here and look at what happened to Zillow's stock as a result of the National Association of Realtors settling this antitrust lawsuit for $410 million. So let's go in here. And I know some of you guys aren't charted. This is Zillow stock. So in March 14th, the stock basically closed at about $55.10. And look what happened after that settlement. It closed at about $48. So that's about a 15% drop. This white line right here is what they call a 200-day moving average. So for those of you who don't follow stocks, anytime a stock breaks that barrier, that long position of a 200 moving price point, that typically means there's more room to the downside. So I would anticipate Zillow seeing more and more pain before pleasure, because a lot of people in the industry knows that agents buy Zillow leads. Okay, that's a big component how Zillow generates revenue. So with this new settlement, that's going to make it very interesting, right? Because you got to work something out with the buyer. It's not just about, oh, let me find somebody who's interested in buying a house on a Zillow lead that I'm paying for. And if they like the house, I'm going to get compensated through the seller's equity or through the seller's paying the commission. That no longer is the case. So it's going to be interesting to see how platforms like that, who supply leads for real estate agents who are looking for qualified buyers, how that's going to impact their business model moving forward. So once again, I really hope you enjoyed the content. Last video did awesome. I had over 1,500 views. And like I said, I have not had that many views since I did the video about 18 months ago about the pension crisis in the United States. That particular video has over 10,000 views. So if you have not subscribed, please do so at this time. Please hit the like button if you are enjoying the content, because once again, a lot of you view my content, but you don't hit that like button. So this is going to do it for the Kevin Strong Show. Y'all come back now, you hear?